Hey guys, we are giving away a hunt here at Fall Obsession. Our veteran hunt giveaway is back for 2025, and we are taking one either prior or active duty military service member on a whitetail and coyote hunt in West Virginia this year, December 5th through 7th, 2025. It could be you or a veteran that you know. Go to fallobsession.com/giveaway to learn more about this hunt and how either you can enter if you're a veteran, or if you're not a veteran but you know one that would be deserving of a trip like this, you can nominate them again to be our veteran hunter for this year. So go to the website, check it out, and sign someone up. We are accepting applications until November 2nd, 2025. Don't miss out. This podcast is brought to you guys in partnership with our friends over at Hoot Camo. There will be a discount code later on in this podcast, so be sure you guys listen up and don't miss out on that. You can save on some gear this hunting season. If this is your first Fall Obsession podcast to listen to, thank you for pressing play. Make sure that you subscribe on whatever podcast platform you are streaming on. Turn on your notifications if that's an option, because we drop a new podcast every single Monday morning on all major streaming platforms. If you like watching the podcast videos, you can find those on the YouTube channel Thursday of the same week. Don't miss out on that. Make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube channel, because we have tons of other content other than just podcast on there. We produce hunting shows, films, gear reviews, educational content, all sorts of stuff here at Fall Obsession, and you want to be subscribed to that YouTube channel. Got a new film that's about to be released here in the next couple of weeks, so make sure that you don't miss out on that. fallobsession.com is the website. All of the things that I just mentioned as far as the different types of content we produce, you can find them on that website, as well as our apparel line. We just dropped a couple of new t-shirts that are conservation based, meaning that your purchase of either of these t-shirt designs will benefit a conservation organization, specifically Howl for Wildlife or Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. These are a couple of groups that we have chosen to support through the sales of these t-shirts. So head on over to fallobsession.com and check those out. Social media, wherever you are active, Fall Obsession is there too. Make sure you are following and subscribe to all of our social platforms. We're also doing a milestone giveaway right now where we're giving away a couple pairs of Wiley X sunglasses once we hit some threshold numbers for our followers on social media. So check that out. That should be pinned to the top of every single page. And finally, Carbon TV is a free hunting and outdoor streaming platform that you can head to right now and start by pressing play on hundreds of different hunting shows, podcasts, films, live streams, all sorts of stuff like that from hundreds, maybe thousands of different creators in the hunting and outdoor space. Fall Obsession produces 4 different shows on the Carbon TV platform. This podcast, our staff-inspired video podcast series called Couch Chats, is on Carbon TV, as well as our 2 different hunting shows titled Texas Dirt and Midwest Mindset. Don't miss out on Carbon TV, guys. Start streaming today. We're going to get this thing rolling. Thanks for sticking with me. You guys are listening to another Fall Obsession podcast.
The power lies within that middle ground.
Hunting transformed my life.
I think you have to be built somewhat different.
That Dale Brisby's a super puncher.
When you get Pop-Tarts on the next Walmart order? I'm serious.
Because to come into this country and stay dedicated to that, it was pretty awesome.
If it's only for one, then you've done your job.
We have to do what's right for the wildlife, and that's our responsibility as hunters.
Fall Obsession Podcast.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another Fall Obsession Podcast episode. My name is Sam Thrash. I am your show host over here. Thank you guys for tuning in. I am flying solo by design yet again this week, and it is, even for me, seemingly close to the last time I did this. I did this for episode 251, titled A World on Fire, talking about some conservation issues that were relevant and kind of new on the horizon at that moment in time. Just a few weeks later, here we are, and we once again have new issues on the table. And if you have been listening to the show for, several weeks or longer than that, and you've been heeding my advice to stay engaged, stay plugged in, pay attention to what's going on out there in the world, then everything I talk about in this podcast should not be foreign to you. If you are a new listener to the show, if you are a new hunter, If you simply were curious based off of the title of this episode or some stuff that you've been hearing about here recently, good for you for press and play. Let this be your introduction to what's going on in the conservation world and why you need to say your piece, why you need to be involved and actively participating in advocating for your right to hunt and fish, your right to access public lands, and science-based wildlife conservation and wildlife management. Ambler Road. That's a term, a title, whatever you want to call it, that we should all be familiar with right now. Here recently, President Trump signed an executive order to approve the Ambler Road project, which is going to construct a 211-mile road through the Brooks Range in Alaska. The justification for this being mining purposes. The Trump administration specifically saying that there are critical domestic minerals that they can now access by approving this project. I personally am conflicted by something like this in a certain degree. The hunter in me, the conservationist, in me, is very much opposed to this, and that is battling internally in my mind with me as an individual who is very right-leaning. I'm conservative. I'll say what everybody's already realizing listening to me talk right now. I voted for President Trump. I personally like that he's not your typical politician, that he comes at some things with more of a business mindset. I think that there has been a benefit for our country in the long run for that mentality in a presidential administration. I think he's doing some good things, personally. Not trying to get off in the weeds on politics. That's just where I stand personally as an individual. I'm happy to have a respectful conversation with anybody about that. But this Ambler Road thing is just eating me up, man. Because the fact that this was an executive order and seemingly, at least from my perspective, no regard for the effects it would have on wildlife, hunting opportunities, conservation, just public lands. It was just kind of, it felt like a slap in the face, specifically, especially given everything that's been going on recently, and I'll get to it a little bit later in this episode, but politicians that are seemingly on the right side of the fence that are making decisions that are affecting hunting, and a large portion of individuals that I would probably, at least from my perspective, consider a large portion of their voter base, if you will. And it doesn't make sense to me why we keep attacking this without at least having some conversations. Those conversations have to happen. Like, I'm just of the opinion that they're vital at this point, and I can't believe that they are not happening, and that we as in the conservatives doing it to ourselves, we're just hammering away at this and we're butting heads constantly. I've done podcasts recently where I've talked to individuals, and I reference this a lot. Pretty much every time I do a conservation episode, I talk about my conversation with Aaron Davidson from Gunworks, a Cody, Wyoming resident, who, when Mike Lee was trying to sell off our public lands here recently in that fire sale, and we'll talk about Senator Lee here in just a second because he's back at it in a different way. But when all that was happening, Aaron had an interesting perspective. He did not agree with the way it was carried out as far as just kind of shotgun blast across the board. This is how we're going to do it. But he was like, specific conversations need to happen in certain areas because he's out there in Cody looking at a patch of sage, just flatland sagebrush, basically, that very few animals live in, that is technically public land, that nobody hunts. And he's like, well, there's a housing issue in this community, and I'm struggling to even get employees who can afford to live here. Why can't we have houses on this specific piece of land instead of it being, a public hunting access that nobody uses? That I use that as an example because that's an individual that I have specifically talked to face-to-face on this show about this, and I can understand his perspective in that regard. But there has to be that local component when that happens. And that's what I feel like we're missing. I feel like we are just doing just fail swoop after fail swoop to try and chip away at this stuff, all in the name of our, bringing more jobs and stimulating the economy and, domestic critical minerals and all this kind of stuff. Mine, baby, mine. It just, there's a disregard for the other side of it, I feel like. And the big thing that this road, specifically where it's supposed to go across the Brooks Range in Alaska, aside from just what you guys can imagine with this big industrial sized mining road, 211 miles long, running through the Alaskan wilderness, which would basically also run through just the gates of the Arctic National Park and Reserve, by the way. It just, you can imagine just the effect that alone would have. But then specifically, we start looking at, what animals live there. How is this going to affect hunting? The Western Arctic caribou herd, this road would run right through a primary route of their migration every year. This is one of the largest caribou herds in the world. And you're talking about just completely jacking everything up. What do you think that is going to do to the hunting opportunities? Seriously, like, and I'm not saying that directed at anybody in particular. I'm just food for thought. What do you think it's going to do? This is a caribou herd that already, in a 20-year span, 2003 to 2023, they saw a decline in numbers in a 20-year span from 2003 to 2023. 2003, this caribou herd had almost 500,000 head of caribou in it, just shy of 500,000. And now, 2023, a couple years ago, the survey, at least in the research that I was doing, had them ballparked at around 152,000. That's a huge drop already. And now you can imagine the impact this is going to have. And then what is that going to do, not just to that herd specifically, but what's that going to do to other, and I'm just talking caribou hunting here. This is applicable to any species that this is going to affect up there. What's that going to do to other herds of caribou up there? Caribou hunting opportunities just across the board in general, from my limited and short research that I've done, seem to be somewhat decreasing. Just on a general trend, there's becoming fewer hunting opportunities in the name of conservation, but then the hunting opportunities that are there because of that are seemingly becoming more expensive. Again, what do you think is going to happen here? It's going to get more expensive. There's going to be fewer opportunities. There's going to be fewer caribou on the landscape because of it. And like I said, now we're going to have a mining road running right through the middle of their primary migration route. It is stuff like this that is just eating away at me when I see this kind of thing happening. There are organizations on the forefront of this. There are people tuned in, people with more pull, a bigger voice than you or me. And I'll get to that in a little bit. We have to support those individuals. We have to give them the resources that they need to continue this fight and to put, again, science-based wildlife conservation and wildlife management in front of these people who are making these decisions. Alaskan senators, Dan Sullivan, and I might butcher the name, but Lisa Murkowski, both Republicans, have supported the Ambler Road project. I'm not an Alaskan resident. I'm from Texas. I know, other than that, they are Republicans and they are elected politicians, elected officials in the state of Alaska. I do not know a whole lot about these people. I did not know hardly anything about them until this whole thing started coming out and I started getting on the interwebs. But if I was from Alaska, I would be making some phone calls to some politicians' offices. I would be writing some emails and some letters, and I would be questioning why they are supporting it. Why are if I, again, speaking as an Alaskan resident, if, hypothetically, why are the people I'm voting for supporting this? Because this is how it affects me. If you are from Alaska, you need to be saying something. And feel free to put me in my place if I'm speaking out of turn on either of these individuals, but I would not expect just the quick and blatant support from these folks on something like this if they were my politicians. If this was in Texas, I would be making some phone calls, and I would be having my voice heard in their offices. Hey guys, sorry to cut y'all off from the conversation. We'll get back to it in just a second, but first I want to tell you guys about Hoot Camo. Hoot Camo is one of the best camouflage brands out there for the blue-collar hunter. The prices, you can't beat them. The patterns are extremely versatile. They work in so many different environments. I have worn Hoot Camo hunting whitetails, hogs, and turkeys down here in the hardwoods, the mesquites, the scrub brush of Texas. I've worn it in the flatland plains of eastern Colorado hunting mule deer. I've even worn it in the mountains of central Idaho hunting elk. It works in so many different places. It is extremely high quality gear, extremely warm, holds up well against the elements. You cannot beat it. Go to hootcamo.com, use the code FallObsession15 on your next order, no matter how big or small it is, and check out everything that Hoot Camo has on there for you guys. Not that I am alone am going to shift the political landscape or this politician's opinion or where they put their support. But I will tell you, recent podcast again I did with the public land advocate just a few weeks ago. He talked about a credible source that shared some information with him that so few people in the current day and age actually write their politicians, actually call their offices to talk about their opinions on current issues and what their politician is or is not doing to support a certain thing. And he, like John put it in perspective, like, man, on credible authority, it only takes 10 or 12 people in a short period of time to email or call about the same issue for them to actually start thinking about it. That's how few people are calling our politicians' offices right now, to the point where 10 people, give or take, could potentially sway their opinion. Why are we not calling? Why are we not letting our voice be heard in this capacity with our elected officials? If literally that's all it takes. Look at Mike Lee's public land sale from a couple months ago, right? I mean, look up the freaking numbers on how many people were calling the U.S. Capitol switchboard and calling and advocating for their public lands. It was enough. We started seeing senators dropping their support, and our elected officials started backing away from Mike Lee because they're looking at this like, oh, this is a bad deal. This could be a little bit of political suicide at some point for Mike Lee if he keeps going down this warpath. It was enough to sway him. You as an American, you as a voter, you have that ability. And again, if I'm an Alaskan resident, if I'm somebody who hunts in Alaska, I am making phone calls. If I am somebody who cares about the future of our lands and our hunting opportunities anywhere in this country, I'm making a phone call. I'm sending an email. And what's even better than that, and we'll get to it at the end of the episode, it has never been easier. When I made phone calls and sent emails about the Ambler Road project and the next one that I'm going to mention here in a second when we start getting into some BLM resource management plans, when I advocated and used my voice for those things, it took me less than a minute. It took me less than a minute to call, and it took me less than a minute to have an email sent because of other companies who have gone the extra mile to make it as easy as possible for you. Do not sit by idly and just watch this happen. We'll talk about how you can get involved and how you can speak up here in just a second. No cost involved if you're worried about that. You don't even have to pay a dime. It's free to let your voice be heard as an American. So Ambler Road, President Trump signs that executive order. Moving forward, what would need to happen next is And excuse me, I'm going through my notes a little bit here to make sure that I stay on point, but the Bureau of Land Management, BLM, they will next have to conduct an environmental analysis and review. I believe what I remember, I failed to write it down on my notes for this episode, so I apologize for that. I believe what I read up on was that this has happened before. That President Trump during his first term was looking to do something like this. And the BLM stepped in with their analysis. Long story short, the permit or the ability to do this was eventually denied. Then we had a change in the presidency, and Biden wasn't going to do anything like this. Biden put the kibosh on it. Essentially what has to happen for this to actually be carried out is the BLM now has to provide a different interpretation of the proposal for approval because of how this has been attempted before. So there's time. There's time to get involved. There's time to advocate. There's time to have your voice be heard. Get involved. I bring up the Biden presidency because I mentioned it briefly as well in the last podcast. I mean, obviously, you guys, like I just talked about at the beginning, you know where my kind of political opinions align. So it shouldn't surprise you when I say not a fan of Biden. But I'm also, I feel like, and this is just me and my personal opinion here, no weight behind it, but I feel like some of these things that Trump is doing, because Biden does have a couple of policies, and we talked about it a little bit in 251, a couple of things like the public lands rule and some stuff like that came into effect and became a thing during his presidency that I don't think are bad for public lands. But I feel like for some reason it strikes me as just somebody who can not get so ingrained in pro-Trump that I believe every single thing he does is good. That's not who I am. I feel like he's trying to almost scrub our legislation and our country of anything with Biden's name. Anything that he did. And it's like, let's pump the brakes here for a second. Maybe we can build off of something or make something that he did or attempted better or different, but do we really need a wholesale scrub of this whole thing? That's my personal opinion. Again, I don't have any credible source behind that, right? That's just kind of how I feel about this whole thing. But, so where I'm going now, speaking of BLM, same time frame that we're dealing with this Ambler Road executive order that our president signed. Congress used the Congressional Review Act, the CRA, to overturn the BLM's resource management plan in Montana, North Dakota, and Alaska. This, just like that, is putting over 160 million acres of public lands, of hunting ground, of wildlife habitat now at risk. Congress used an old act that has not ever in the history of the world been used to influence anything in the form of a resource or land management plan, act, anything like that. They used it to overturn the BLM's management plans in these states. Again, I look at this as a blatant disregard for the processes and the organizations that are in place to do the right thing by lands and wildlife. I see this as a blatant disregard for any work that an organization like the Bureau of Land Management is doing to put plans in place that are going to preserve our wildlife for future generations of hunting. What the heck? Why are we doing this? Why are we nullifying a resource management plan like this? It sets the precedent to essentially undo, just because you don't like it, just because it's inconvenient, just because you want to do something else with whatever you got going on in that little slice of heaven out there. It puts every BLM plan since 1996 in jeopardy. If they can do this in these 3 states, like, what's to stop them from going farther? Oh, it worked there. Let's just do it again. It's an overreach of our government, and it is an infringement upon all of the hard work that has gone into preserving science-based wildlife management. Hey folks, if you guys are in the North Texas area like I am, then you need to go to Bear River Archery and Pro Shop in Van Alstyne, Texas. Justin and the guys up there have an incredible operation set up. They will take great care of you and all of your archery needs. They are the official bow shop in North Texas of Fall Obsession. I love going there, and I'm picky. If you guys know me, I am very selective on who I let work on my bow. I will let Justin work on my bow. They do great stuff. Check out Bear River Archery and let them know that Fall Obsession sent you. If this kind of thing stands, if it actually proceeds and goes according to their plan, it's not just wildlife. You're going to see grazing, energy development, habitat restoration, hunting and fishing access. All of this stuff is going to be thrown into limbo, which in turn, without the current BLM management plans in effect that are, presiding over this, all of these things are now going to divert back to outdated plans, outdated protocols, outdated management practices, and it is going to affect the here and now for hunting in the outdoors, for public lands, for all of this stuff. And again, going back to let's scrub the world of Joe Biden, they claim this was to repeal Biden-era plans that restricted coal, gas, and oil leasing. Is this the only way? Seriously, I am not a politician. I am not somebody who has a political answer and the right perspective on every little issue to know, yes, this is how they should be doing that because this, and this. That's not me. But I pose the question, is this the only way? Is there no other way that we could accomplish this if we are simply trying to gain more ability to mine coal, to drill for gas and oil? Is this what we came up with as the best way for America? For the future of this country? For everybody all together? Was everybody at this table? Was everybody consulted? I don't think so. I don't think so because, again, this seems to all of a sudden be a slap in the face to science-based management practices. I didn't mention it before. I think I actually accidentally skimmed over it in my notes. But kind of circling back, not that it's not relevant to this as well, but mainly with that Ambler Road project, did you all know that in addition to the executive order that approved this project, the White House also made the federal government a 10% shareholder in Trilogy Metals, the mining company that is going to be working on the Ambler Road project. Again, like I said at the beginning, Donald Trump, our president, he is a businessman. That alone, okay, I understand where his mind is with this. But again, what kind of outlook are you giving your Americans by doing this? And again, guys, I am conflicted. I'm a little torn apart as a conservative voter, if you will, with some of this stuff, because there's one side of me that wants to see America thrive and business and the economy in America thrive. But for me, it is not at the expense of hunting, fishing, our public lands, and science-based wildlife management practices. Not at that cost. I am all for a healthy and strong country that is able to support itself, like the American dream of President Trump, but not at the cost of our public lands. So, the other issue that I will bring to the table, the other thing that I will discuss, Senator Mike Lee, back at it again, using the cloak of now illegal immigration to push his Borderlands Protection Act, which will in turn defile the current Wilderness Act. His Borderlands Protection Act is essentially going to open up lands within 100 miles of every border for infrastructure in the name of addressing the immigration crisis. Roads will be built, buildings, again, infrastructure is going to come in. Mike Lee is lying to you. He is using, again, an issue that is close to the heart of many conservative voters, illegal immigration. I'm not even going to open up that can of worms on this show. Not the time, not the place, not the setting, not for this podcast. But we all know that that is typically a hot topic for your right-leaning voter. And he is using that to try and sway opinions that is in turn going to attack our public lands, our wildernesses. Like I just said, it is going to defile the current Wilderness Act. 100 miles of every border. Look, picture Montana in your mind. That's the top third of Montana. The top third of Montana. And you carry that all the way around this country. What are we doing? What are we doing? I'm rambling a little bit. I'm certainly sharing personal thoughts and opinions on this. I'm grateful if you guys are still hanging with me at this point in the podcast. You don't have to agree with me. I'm not here trying to sway your opinion. I'm here trying to encourage you to educate yourself if you're not already on what's going on. I will also say I'm recording this podcast roughly a week before it's going to be released. Just how it worked with time in my recording schedule. So for all I know, by the time this episode comes out, there may be some other developments, in which case here in a few weeks you guys may get to hear me fire this thing up again by myself. But we have, I say it all the time, and feel like I'm beating a dead horse, but we have to pay attention. We have to get involved. You can be a conservative. You can be a right-leaning individual. You can be on the fence in the middle. You could be a left-leaning individual. You could agree with our president. You cannot agree with our president. As I've mentioned, typically I do agree with him on a lot of issues. But you can agree. You can support a politician. Support in general what they bring to the table, what they're doing for their current office, and you can not support a certain piece of that. We're all human. We all disagree. We're all going to look through this through a different lens, and our politicians right now are clearly looking at this through a certain type of lens, a lens of infrastructure, development, construction, economy, all that kind of stuff. They're not looking at this through the lens of a hunter and an outdoorsman. And that's where we come in. That's where we have to step in and give them that perspective. That's where you need to pick up the phone. That's where you need to send an email. That's where you got to get involved. We cannot let them blatantly do all of this without that perspective, without using that voice. We saw it with Mike Lee's public lands sale attempt. We saw it there. And we saw a community of not just hunters and outdoorsmen, but just outdoor enthusiasts, hikers, campers, animal lovers even, that all came together on a common battlefield and stood for what they believed was in the best interests of our country and what they believed as a voter. They exercised their right to use their voice in this country, and they held their politicians accountable. They made the phone calls. I voted for you. I support you. I do not support this. I hope that you don't support this. And I already kind of put it in perspective for you guys earlier as far as how little sometimes it might take in a short period of time to actually start getting a politician to second guess where they're putting their allegiance. Hey guys, thanks for listening to the show. Hope you guys are enjoying it. There's so many different places that you guys can tune in to Fall Obsession Podcast, and one of them is the Outdoor Call radio app. Outdoors Dan from Respect the Game TV, he created an app that you can download on any device where you can stream hunting shows and podcasts on a loop every single day. Our show, Fall Obsession Podcast, plays on that loop on Mondays. That's the same day as our new publications on the other apps. And there's also tons of other hunting shows and podcasts on there that you guys can listen to. Go download the Outdoor Call Radio app today. It is free. You can start streaming immediately. And be sure that you follow their Facebook page, because Outdoors Dan does some live radio shows throughout the week. And even if you are not local to those radio stations, his broadcasts are shared on his Facebook Live. It's Outdoors Dan and the Outdoor Call Radio app. Go download it today. Hold them accountable. You're a voter. You put them in office. They work for you. They work for me. Hold them accountable. Do not let them just slide all over this and push something through without a perspective from an outdoorsman. Call the U.S. Capitol switchboard. I'm going to give you the number right now. If you want to write it down, get something to write it down real quick. Call as soon as you're done with this podcast, or press pause and call right now and then come back and hit play again. 202-224-3121. 202-224-3121. I feel like I'm doing an infomercial or something, like I'm selling a scrub brush for $19.99 or something. 2-for-1 special. Call that number. Tell them what state you're from. Tell them which senator, who you want to leave a message for. They will transfer you. You can leave a message. That's it. Takes less than a minute. Promise you. I've done it several times. Takes less than a minute. Email. I mentioned it earlier, time or two in this episode. There are organizations like Howl for Wildlife and Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. Those are the two that I use. There may be more out there, but they have action tabs on their website. Go to their website, pull up the action tab, and on there they have an explanation on a current conservation issue. They have a button you can click that will generate an email to every relevant politician based on your location. Your state senators and your state representatives, your president, and anybody else depending on the issue that might need to get that email. It will automatically populate right there for you. You put in your name so that letter's complete with your name and your opinion on it. If you want to customize it more than that, normally you can within certain parameters, and then you click send. Once again, it takes a minute or less to do that. If you are listening to this podcast while you're at work or while you're outside on the weekend doing some honeydews around the house, you have 2 minutes in your day to do this. You have 2 minutes to make your voice heard for conservation, for science-based wildlife management practices, for your right to hunt and fish, for your right to public land access, for your ability to access more public lands. You have 2 minutes for it, man. And if you don't think you do, then your right to hunt and fish isn't a priority in your life. I'm just going to say it. I'm not trying to dog on you, but if you're listening to this at this point and you don't care about what I'm saying, if you think this doesn't affect me, when am I going to go to Alaska? When am I going to be able to afford to go to Alaska? What does it matter? Because if they can do it in Alaska, if they can completely overturn the BLM's resource management plans in Montana, North Dakota, and Alaska, then what's to make them stop from coming to your state? Why do you think that you won't eventually be at the front door, in the front yard of all of this stuff, right? I don't care if you hunt that state. I don't hunt Alaska. I would love to hunt Alaska. I don't have the money to do it right now. I'm a blue-collar hunter just like you. It's the dream. Literally, I've said on this podcast before when I've been asked, my bucket list hunt, number 1, caribou hunt in Alaska. I don't have anything on the books. I couldn't even tell you right now the exact dollar figure it's probably going to cost me to go. That's how little planning I've done. That's how much it's still a dream to me, but it's a dream. And that dream gets chipped away every little bit more and more whenever stuff like this happens and whenever you don't speak up. It affects you. It affects future generations. It affects hunting. It affects wildlife. It affects all of it. Go to these websites. Go to the action tab. Fill out a letter. Send it. Make a phone call. You spend enough time scrolling social media and Instagram and TikTok, you can take a couple minutes to do something productive like this and make a difference. Does not cost you $1. These organizations certainly could use the funding and could use the donations, and I am not here telling you to send them money. They don't pay me anything. We're not sponsored by them. We're not affiliated with them in even a formal capacity. We do a lot of work with Hal on a regular basis as far as content creation, podcasts, that kind of stuff. But outside of that, nobody's telling me to record this episode and to plug these organizations. And there's more of them out there. These are just the couple that I'm mentioning. So I hope you find some value in that. I hope you find some authenticity in that, and that it makes a little bit of a difference for you in that decision if you're still on the fence. I could keep beating that dead horse all night long. Call today for limited time. Also, I said at the beginning, but we at Fall Obsession are trying to do our part to contribute to that as well. We've created a couple of t-shirts that are on our website that are conservation based. They should be the first 2 t-shirts that you see when you go to our online store at fallobsession.com. Conservation based in the message. You will not find our logo, our name anywhere on that shirt. I don't need advertising from these shirts designs. I do not care about that. I care about everything that we've talked about in this podcast. Everything that is at risk and constantly in the crosshairs, in my opinion. That's what I care about. So when we design these shirts, intentionally, our logo wasn't anywhere on them. We're not looking for publicity from it at all. We just want you to get involved. And if the only way you're compelled to get involved is by buying a shirt, you know what? We're not going to make any money off of it. We're not going to make any money off of your purchase. You know what we're going to do? That money that you just paid for that shirt, we're going to send it to Hal. And we're going to send it to BHA so that they can go do something with it. We're not looking to make a buck. They're cool shirt designs. I love them. I'm fixing to be wearing one. I wish I had it in time for this podcast. But they're truly going towards a cause that actually matters. And so if you're not even going to send an email, if you're not even going to make a phone call, man, at least go buy you a shirt or do something like that that can support a conservation organization and support the efforts that are going towards actually putting a stop to this nonsense that keeps coming down the pipe again and again and again. Because it doesn't stop with any piece of it. It didn't stop with Proposition 127 in Colorado last year. It didn't stop with Mike Lee's public land sale. And it's not going to stop with Ambler Road. It's not going to stop with what Congress just did with the CRA Act to overturn the BLM stuff. It's not stopping with any of that. There will constantly be more. Whether it's from our own people who we would consider in our own camp, our right-leaning Republican and conservative representatives, it's them. It's not even the anti-hunting extremists. The anti-hunting extremists haven't gone away. They're still over there. But they're like, hey, look at them. Look at what they're doing. They're fighting with each other in their own backyard. Get involved, guys. Pay attention. Again, like I said at the beginning, if this is the first conservation episode you've ever heard on Full Obsession Podcast, I appreciate you making it through. It wasn't just me rambling or complaining. I hope that there was some information in here that you guys could take away with it, and I hope that it inspires you guys to pay attention. Those same organizations that I mentioned, How for Wildlife, BHA, they post regularly on their websites and their social media pages what's going on. There's some other social media pages that you can follow that frequently keep up with these things. These are just a couple that I personally follow that typically when a new issue comes out, they're one of the first ones that it pops up on. You can follow those 2 organizations on social media. You can follow Outdoor Life or go to outdoorlife.com or just follow Outdoor Life on social media because they have been pretty good about writing up articles as stuff is happening on this kind of stuff to not just inform you of a new issue, but it's a full piece that you can read and actually get a pretty reasonable explanation on what's going on. So follow them. I know Steve Ranella and Meat Eater have done a pretty good job of posting stuff like this, talking about this kind of stuff. And then, I mean, there's plenty of other ones out there. But Fall Obsession, please don't take this as me trying to plug you guys to go follow our socials and stuff. I'm just saying that when we see something, we share it. When we see something, we share it so it can be in front of you guys as quickly as possible. So that's out there as well. I'm working on getting more guests on the show. Not every week. I don't want to just saturate and bore you guys with, hammering these issues week after week after week. But when stuff changes, when new things come up like this that's relevant, that's when I get involved. That's when I step up and use my voice and use this podcast to spread the word, to help you guys understand what's going on out there and why it's important for you to pay attention and get involved. I'm trying to bring a little bit more of a variety to some of the guests. I won't say, I'm sure there will be returning guests that we've had on the show before to talk about conservation issues coming back on the show again to discuss them once again. But I am also trying to get some people from some different perspectives to come on the show. Some people who are more just outdoor lifestyle enthusiasts. Some people who enjoy public lands for other reasons other than hunting. This is a hunting podcast, but we explore all different worlds of the outdoor lifestyle and everything that comes with it on this show. So trying to bring a little bit more variety to our guest list in the future for conservation episodes. I personally would much rather sit down across from somebody and talk about the things that we've talked about today. But that doesn't always happen, and some of this stuff is just on my mind. I'm passionate about it. I want to get it off my chest. I want to talk about it as quickly as possible, and I want to keep things relevant for you guys on this show with frequent episodes that touch on these things. So that's why I flew solo again, kind of hot on the heels of another one, 251, only a few weeks off of that, but neither here nor there. Thank you guys for listening. Stay involved, stay plugged in, pay attention to what's going on. Use your voice as a hunter, as an American, as a voter. Hold your politicians accountable. And I will be back with you guys again next week for another Fall Obsession podcast. Thanks for listening.